Yeah, okay, so looks like everybody's in. So welcome to our first group call for Food Bank. I think we're just welcoming some of the organizations, especially our beneficiaries, as well as the other fellow food banks. So we have people from Food Cycle here, as well as Kachara Soup Kitchen, which is all the way from KL. So welcome. As well as our beneficiaries from Tai Hua Kwan, New Hope Community Services, Fair Community Services, Sun Love Home, St. Teresa's Home, Majula Community, Presbyterian Community Services, as well as a few of our partners. So we have INEOS, NYP Council, Spoonful, and Vulcan Capital. And additionally, we also have SPH that's also joining in this call. So I'll hand over the time to Nicole, our co-founder, who will introduce.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon from Singapore, in case you're not based over here. We had a very exciting morning because President Halimah Yacob just visited us. So likely you will hear that in the news, maybe tomorrow. Very timely because it's World Food Day tomorrow and we have an exciting event called Drive Hunger Away, also headed by Margarita and Jessie, who's helping to coordinate this call. But we felt that it was quite timely at this juncture to share in detail what our food insecurity report is actually all about, because we've been having some questions from some of our fellow peers from other countries and even the beneficiaries as well, to understand firstly what was the motivation behind deep diving into the hunger issues. And secondly, why did we enter into this 20-month survey? So it wasn't done in a very short span of time. We actually took close to 2 years to customize this special report. Before I hand it over to the Lian Center, I would actually like to mention on this note that the data that we use is actually national data. So MSF actually gave us some suggestions on the percentage from the different race, background, maybe even the locations that they are living in Singapore as well. So we actually have some discussions with the government agencies before we started the report. But in a nutshell, this is Singapore's first deep dive into what we call the hunger situation. And for those of you who may want to know, we are going to embark on part 2 very, very shortly, likely by Q1 of next year. We're going to develop the framework. So if any of you, after listening to the report today, you feel that there's some other information that you would like to know, whether it's from an agency perspective, a beneficiary perspective, please do share with us. And I wanted to put a disclaimer here, because this is the first report that Singapore has ever put together collectively from an NGO's angle. Really, the report is not perfect. There's a lot more that we can ask. There's a lot more that we can do, but with limited manpower, budget, and timing as well, we wanted to focus on looking at the important things first. And so you can imagine part 2 or part 3 as it comes along over the next few years, we are able to then improve on the reports. So on this note, I would like to thank everyone for your time, for joining us during lunchtime. If you have to eat something, please go ahead and eat. We are the food bank, you know, so nutrition is most important. Have a coffee if you need to. But on this note, I'll pass you over to Delvin and Tanya, who has been heading the Lian Center for Social Innovation team for this project over the last 20 months or so. So over to you, Tanya and Delvin. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Nicole. Tanya, could you share the slides?
Yes, thank you so much, Nicole, and good afternoon, everyone. Just give me a second while I toggle and share my screen with all of you. And just give me a thumbs up if you all can see my screen as I turn the slideshow on. Okay, can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Wonderful, that's great. So Dalvin, take it away. We've divided the presentation between the two of us. So Dalvin will take us through the first part, and then I'll take you guys to the second part. And of course, welcoming questions, comments at the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to chime in.
Thanks, Tanya. So everyone can hear me well? Yes? Okay, great. So I think we're very happy to be here and to present to you the Hunger Report, which really provides a detailed account of the first national study that we have done on food insecurity in Singapore. So while there are other studies done on food insecurity, but through small-scale investigations, what we wanted the nationally representative data on the prevalence, causes, consequences of food insecurity in Singapore. So next slide. So how did we define food insecurity? The way we define food insecurity is when a household does not have or is not confident of having economic and physical access to safe, sufficient, nutritious food to meet their dietary needs as well as their food preferences. So what we really want to point out here is that the absence of hunger is not a sign of food security. Okay, so we looked at 4 different dimensions of achieving food security. The first being availability. Is are households able to secure a reliable and a consistent provision of quality food? We look at access. Is there sufficient economic or physical access to acquire food? We look at utilization. Are households able to transform the food that they receive into actual meals? And also stability, because we recognize that sometimes food insecurity can be transient, it can be cyclical, or it can be chronic. So these are the kinds of things that we wanted to take into account as we embarked on our study. So for this study, who made up our sample? So we sought customized frames from DOS, the Department of Study, and it is that it has to have at least one Singaporean or PR residing within that household. And what we did when we sought these customized frames from DOS is that we divided them into the detailed housing types, which was proportionate to the housing type distribution in Singapore. And from there, we also looked into gathering data from the different planning regions, so central of Singapore, north, south, east, west, and northeast. So for this study, it is consistent with other local studies in the sense that we use housing data as a proxy for income. Okay, so you also note that we sought 2 kinds of sampling frames from DOS, and you might ask why. Why in our second frame are we looking at only 1 to 3 HDB households? That's because in our previous report, we found that food insecurity exists in low-income families. So what we really wanted to do was to be able to gather more richer insights from households who are more likely to be food insecure. Because we had an oversampling of low-income households, what we did during our data analysis is to weight the data. Weighting the data would enable us to make some generalized conclusions about food insecurity in Singapore, because what we had wanted to do was to come up with a national statistic of food insecurity in Singapore. So of population. So you might ask, why did we choose these 3 variables? It's because food insecurity. So how do we measure food insecurity? What is the instrument that we use? The instrument that was used in the Canadian National Report, the HFSSM, the Household Food Security Survey module. So basically, this scale consists of 18 questions for each household. We had 10 questions for the adults in the household and 8 questions for children if children were living in the household. So what we wanted to do was to assess the food status of both the adults as well as the children in the household. Okay, so you can see from this slide how we categorize whether or not a household is food secure or food insecure really depends on their responses to the 18 questions that they were asked to answer. So if they had 0 to 1 affirmative response to the adult scale, they were classified as food secure. Basically, this tells us that they had very little indication of difficulties with regards to access to food. When a household had 2 or to 5 more affirmative responses to the adult scale, basically it showed us that there is some compromise in access as well as quality and quantity of food consumed. And then how we categorize food, severe food insecure households is when they had 6 or more affirmative responses, in relation to the 10 questions asked. So basically, this is an indication that there is reduced food intake as well as disrupted eating patterns. So this essentially is how we measured and categorize food secure as well as food insecure households. So other than the food insecurity scale, what we wanted to do was also to collect other kinds of data to have a more deeper insight into the experiences of food insecure households. So the other questions in the instrument that we used related to food assistance. So how frequently, if any, were they receiving food aid, and what kind of benefits were they receiving? So we really wanted to understand that component as well. We asked questions on the consequence of food insecurity. So we collected their health and health data, such as their height and weight data, because we wanted to see if there is any physical consequences as a result of food insecurity. We also collected perceptions about food insecurity because we wanted to assess the awareness, whether or not Singaporeans generally are aware that food insecurity is an issue in Singapore. Okay, and then the last one was the psychological well-being. So this is also another validated survey instrument that we use. It's a 6-item scale, really to just assess the psychological well-being of those households who are experiencing food insecurity. So next slide, my colleague Tanya will be sharing with you some of the findings and insights that we have found based on this framework, the methodology that we adopted for the study.
Thank you, Dalvin. Thank you so much. And I'll just take you through some of the key findings. Of course, these are not exhaustive. If you're interested in finding more about what all we found out in this survey, I'd invite you to actually read the full report, which is also available, and we can share the link of that with you very shortly. So the main reason that we actually embarked upon this study is because there was no index of food insecurity prevalent in Singapore before we conducted the study. And we wanted to make sure that this index that we came up with should be a nationally representative statistic. So we, as Dalvin had described, we made sure and we took all the efforts and care that was required to ensure that our sample was nationally representative on various demographic variables such as housing type, ethnicity, and educational level. And it matched the national distribution of Singapore at large. And there we found that what is the percentage of Singaporean households who experience food insecurity? And this is what we found. We found that close to 10.4% of our nationally representative sample did fall into the food insecurity category, whereas close to 90% of our sample were food secure. So yes, it's good that a large majority of Singaporeans are food secure, but that does not mean that we can ignore the smaller percentage, this 10.4%, out of which 3.5% were actually severely food insecure. And if you look at this 10.4% in a little bit of take a more deeper look at it, you will find that amongst these food insecure individuals, 2 out of every 5 food insecure individuals experienced food insecurity at least once a month. So the instrument that Dalvin shared with you earlier, the Canadian instrument that we used in our current study, actually asks people to give a retrospective account of how their food situation has been over the last 12 months. And based on that, they are then placed into a food secure, moderately food insecure, or severely food insecure category. Now, amongst the food insecure participants of our study, we found that 2 in 5 experienced it at least once a month. So there are that are there which food insecurity was experienced over the last 12 months. All right. So let's move ahead and let's look at some of the demographics or the profiles of who experiences food insecurity in Singapore. We looked at housing type. As Dalvin said, it was a proxy for income in our study, which is typically done in other Singapore-based studies as well. So we did find that food insecure households were more likely to reside in 1 or 2 room HDB homes as compared to food secure households. What does that mean? That means that these individuals were more likely to come from lower income backgrounds. Okay, and I know this is not a surprising finding for most of you. We can the link between income and food insecurity is a well validated one, and our study found the same link as well. All right, so let me move ahead. Another glimpse of who experiences food insecurity in Singapore, we also looked at the educational status of our respondents. So as Dalvin had alluded to earlier, that our inclusion criteria was that there is one member in the household who's a Singaporean or a permanent resident who's above 18 years of age. So our respondent would be one person in that household who would be able to tell us about the food situation of that household. So amongst our entire sample, which was close to 1,200 households that we interviewed, there were a smaller percentage of those who were interviewed who were actually also the head of households. And when we asked these individuals what was their highest educational level attained, we found that there was a tendency of head of households of food insecure families to have lower educational qualifications, much less likely to have a university level education than their food secure counterparts. Now, why is this finding important? We consider education as a great leveler in Singapore. So if education is what is going to lift people out of their poverty or their financial difficulties, then this should also be a path towards, securing food, for having a food secure environment around you. So we felt that education was a very important factor, and we did find that food insecure families did have lower educational qualifications. All right, so let's move ahead to another section of our findings, which was centered on finding out the antecedents of food insecurity. That is the causes of food insecurity. What is it that causes it? Yes, on the top of our head, we all know that income can be the broad category which causes it, but we broke that up and we found that some of the most frequently cited reasons did revolve around health and illness issues, job loss, or having to pay mortgages or rent. So as you can see, about 90% of the reasons cited were related to financial concerns. But there was a small percentage of our participants, of our food insecure participants, who said that there were non-monetary reasons for why they were not being able to have their food needs met. For example, having time constraints, there's inability to cook. There, single person households of an elderly person who's living alone is not able to cook. Family discord and dysfunction was also noted as one of the reasons by some of our participants. So just to give you an overview of what causes food insecurity in Singapore. Let's move ahead and look at what were the consequences of food insecurity. We looked at both the physical health and the mental health consequences of food insecurity. In terms of physical health, this was not a nutrition survey, so we did not have data on the nutritional intake of all our participants, but we did collect height and weight data by which we could make a very simple calculation of their BMIs. And then we could place our participants into high risk or low risk BMI categories. And what we did find was that amongst our food insecure participants, 63% of them actually were in risky BMI categories, ranging from moderate risk to very high risk of being either overweight or underweight. So, and 37% of them were, only 37% of our food insecure participants were in the healthy BMI range. So this is again intuitive. This finding is intuitive because food definitely is a very important vehicle for us in maintaining good health, of course, apart from physical exercise and mental well-being, food becomes that vehicle for forwarding our physical health. And here we can see that the physical health of our participants had taken a setback. Let's look at the mental health consequences. We also found that our food insecure participants were reporting a slew of negative emotions, such as those that are shown on this graph. They reported being sad, depressed, stressed, anxious, embarrassed, guilty, and even hopeless and ashamed at times. And this was significantly the frequency of experiencing these emotions was significantly higher in our food insecure participants as compared to our food secure participants. There was a statistically significant difference over there. So here again, we did find that food not only feeds our physical bodies, but also it is food for the soul. And mentally also, it has a lot of repercussions for individuals who struggle to have their food needs met. So that was about the consequences of food insecurity. Another line of questioning that we had in our survey centered around food support. So we did find that 22%, only 22% of our food insecure participants were receiving food support. And at about 78% of them were not receiving not a very positive finding, because if there is people in the government is putting so much of effort, food support organizations are working round the clock, there should not be such a huge mismatch in services. But it seems that from our sample that food is not reaching those who need it. We also wanted to understand the reasons why food support is not being sought after. So when we did ask participants about, what did they do if they were food insecure, if they felt food insecurity in the last 12 months, how did they secure food? So a lot of them would say things like, okay, we would borrow from our friends or from our family, and they would use other channels. But the channel of seeking food support from a food support organization was only sought by 37.8% of the food insecure participants. Now, why? They cited reasons like embarrassment. Actually, some were even unaware that there was food support available, and many others felt that there are others who need it more than them. So, so here we could again see there seems to be a misalignment, there seems to be a gap, and there seems to be a mismatch, and there seems to be an urgent need to bridge this gap. So we were quite sobered by this finding as well. So with that, I'll bring you through and talk you. Okay, so there was one more thing that we wanted to share with you, and that was about the awareness of food insecurity in Singapore. We asked them a very simple question: do you know families who are struggling to have their food needs met? And we asked this question across the board to all our participants, to our food secure participants, as well as to our food insecure participants. And as you can see with this bar graph on the left, that in our food secure participants, the number of individuals who said yes was markedly low as compared to those who said no. Whereas amongst our food insecure participants, nearly equal number of individuals endorsed this survey item and said that yes, they did know. About 49.3% of food insecure families knew other families who were struggling, whereas our food secure participants were largely unaware that this is a problem that exists in Singapore. And it just shows that there is a lack of mixing between different stratas of or sections of society in our small island country. So this is something that we thought that was also it was a very compelling finding in our opinion, and we will share why when we talk about the recommendations. So what were our recommendations in the report? Just outlining three main recommendations that we made. Number one was that we needed to definitely tackle the misalignment of food support. I will leave it for our food bank colleagues to share that the wonderful work that they are already doing in this regard. But having said that, there seems to be gaps that need to be filled. For example, cultural sensitivity of the food, of the beneficiaries needs to be taken into account. Duplication needs to be taken into account. taken into account. There needs to be like an overall geographical mapping, so to speak, so that more coordinated efforts can be made, and to do that through their virtual food banking app. So more about it was about increasing the level of awareness about food insecurity in Singapore. So they can all come together as a community to know better. So when people know about the issue, when there is awareness around it, then they are more prepared to do something about it, or to at least develop a sense of empathy around it. And last but not the least, we also stated in the report that we made recommendations towards prioritizing nutritious and healthy eating among Singapore households. And this we actually recommended across the board, even for our food secure and food insecure participants. We found that people are reticent in actually going for healthier food choices, simply sometimes because they are not aware that aware of the nutritional value of healthier food choices, or they have a perception that healthier food choices are costlier. So while the government is taking so much of efforts in popularizing healthy eating campaigns, they need to be doing this in conjunction with appropriate messaging around the fact that healthy eating is not necessarily costlier eating. So with that, I've come to the end of our presentation, but I hope that we've piqued your curiosity, and if you would have any questions, we open the floor for that now. Thank you very much. Will it help if I stop sharing the screen, if we all just want to be on the gallery view? What would your recommendation be, Jessie?
Yeah, I think you can stop the screen sharing and then we can see
Sure.
everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Got it.
Thank you. Thanks, Tanya and Delvin. Thank you for that. Yeah, so maybe on this note, it's meant to be brief and concise, so it's not meant to bore you. We'll be happy to send you the entire report that we have done. But this presentation was just to give you a snapshot on what we have found out as well, and be interested to ask. Nothing is out of bounds, honestly. So if you're curious about certain areas, please feel free to check in with us. Maybe anybody has any questions?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Terence from Figure. Just a question to Tanya and Delvin out of curiosity. Is there anything in your findings that surprised you?
So I think one of the things that surprised us in our findings is that food insecurity actually exists across all the different housing types. So there is food insecurity that actually exists in individuals living in private condominiums, individuals living in landed properties as well. But what we found is that food insecurity, people living in 1 to 2 bedroom households are more likely to experience it than others. I think that was one surprising thing that we found in our study.
Thank you.
And maybe another one, which is not surprising, but definitely compelling, is the whole idea that, because when we're researching a topic, you almost become like an echo chamber, because all you hear about around yourself is food insecurity, and you feel that this is a topic that is gaining a lot of traction. And having an association with Food Bank made us feel that, yes, people know about this and people want to do something about it. But what we found in our study was that people don't know actually about it, and they don't even know that there are families who don't get their 2 square meals and that they struggle. So that was something that we felt that that was a gap that was quite glaring in that sense. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, please?
Hello, I'm Connie from For You as well. So just now, I think based on your presentation, you have mentioned that there is a misalignment about the needy ones, actually they do not really get the food, or they don't really know where to seek for help in terms of food insecure. So I just want to check with your side, is there any recommendation that you have for either like food bank, for beneficiaries like us? How could we really improve the food distribution so that actually those people who really have the needs can be met? Thank you.
Well, our recommendations are based on what we found in the study, and therefore we had our recommendations are more generic in nature, where we say that we need greater coordination amongst food support organizations. But I think in terms of actioning these recommendations, work is being done by Food Bank itself. Maybe Nicole, you want to share your thoughts on this, how you're trying to bridge this gap so that more and more organizations who want to provide support can actually reach those who need it most?
Yeah, I think it will be useful at this juncture to share with everybody that one of the reasons why we decided to do this report is also to show to probably people like MSF or maybe even the SSOs and all that, right, that there indeed is still a gap. I think all of us here, I mean, we are in the NGO space and we are in the feeding space actually. And the most surprising takeaway for ourselves at the food bank is that actually only 22% of people that were interviewed that needed food were getting food aid. And so I think we need to ask ourselves as well, maybe even interagencies, whether is it from MSF point of view or from FFC's point of view, or even from Food Bank's point of view, can the charity task force people, the food task force people, do more to coordinate? And actually on this note, in fact, I think it was MSF themselves that realized that there is still a gap, which is why, how come there's so many of us already giving food aid, but there is still this problem where people still go to the MPs and say, hey, I don't have rice to eat, or I'm not able to afford to feed my family, or whatever it is. So definitely, I think this is the year that more coordination efforts needs to be done, and maybe it will start with data sharing. And I briefly touched on this before, but I think the data cannot sit with someone like the food bank, because I don't think we should be responsible for any household data. So definitely for now, the data needs to sit with some government agency in order to firstly deconflict whether it's duplication of help, or something like that. But importantly also, if there's a database from the social workers perspective, like, hey, this family is getting maybe, I don't know, a bursary, for example, but you also notice that maybe the per capita income is actually very low. How come they're not seeking help for food? Maybe these are some of the data that needs to be shared, and then we can also deep dive or interview every family that the social workers are in touch with, and then we can ask, actually, do you need food aid? Because if food is one easy low-hanging fruit that we can help them out with, then we should actually help them out first, and then whatever payouts or money that they're getting, whether it doesn't matter even if it's vouchers or cash handout or whatever, that should be actually saved for a rainy day, to buy other things that nobody can actually give or donate out. Maybe save it for medicines or books or something else. Yeah, but I think today's report is just a starting point. And I think it's a good basis as well for us to know that there is still a gap and there's work for us to be done collectively. Yeah, not just us, but as a team together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nico, for sharing your view. I think I really agree with what you've mentioned. Really more coordination among the agencies or even government bodies. I think one thought coming to my mind is that I'm not sure whether you guys remember, there's a period of time that people also claiming that low-income families receive too much food rations, that they actually store like a mama shop. So I guess there is quite a dilemma for us as well. For those who really know where are the resources, they really know how to get the resources. But for those who don't really know, they really got nothing. So I guess just now, as mentioned in your presentation, the awareness is very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something to say. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, Francesca here. Now I'm looking at the report, and then you report that those in the the lower income, okay, and they say they are food insecure, but then some of their BMI seems to be very high. Is the food that we are offering them, is it what they really want? You know what I mean? Sometimes you can be giving, but it's not what they want. You know, they want all this junk food, I think, not the healthy food. You know, and that satisfies them more than anything. So I don't know whether food bank, when you ask for also donations, whether you are asking things that your recipients would like to have, or I see plenty of oats, but nobody is taking. Maybe I do not know. Those are not food that it's not the normal diet, I would say. You know, like morning they like fried something, or something from the hawker center, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I mean, when you talk about this food insecure, I don't know. And then yet their BMI is so high. You know, you talk about, and they borrow money to buy what kind of food? I do not know.
Yeah.
If they buy to market the vegetables or meat, it's actually good to feed a family already. It just depends what food. If you say you cannot cook, then learn to cook. You know, that's very simple. All one pot, throw inside, and you get a very healthy meal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just my concern. You see, a lot of people sometimes they give things, but it's not what they want. And then that's why you say they store a lot in their homes. You can give them, and then they store a lot, and maybe they sell them also. I've heard of cases like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Maybe just to answer Francesca's point. So firstly, I think there's a disparity now between food rations and cooked meals. I think there's an increasing need for cooked meals, and the variety of cooked meals is also in demand. So actually, some of them are asking for more variety in terms of the cooked food that they receive. So I think because there's not enough soup kitchens in Singapore, and there's not enough.
That's correct. And soup kitchen normally also get a lot from donations, so they cook what they get. You see, so I think they prefer, like, you give them a voucher, they go to a hawker center and choose what they want.
Yeah. So maybe on this note, we will share, our bank card, because now we're seeing bank cards.
Yeah.
It's a food credit program where you can actually redeem the food from the vending machine.
Correct.
But we're actually rolling this out with the food courts and the kopitiams and all that.
I've seen it. There are vouchers. Yeah, there are vouchers.
Yeah. So actually, it's a card system that we are creating. It's called a food bank card. So there's food credits inside. So if you go to a food court, we are enabling the beneficiaries as well to use those food credits to redeem meals from, whether it's chicken rice or prawn noodles or some Indian prata or something. But other than redeeming from the vending machines, we are also enabling this to be redeemed at food courts. So we will actually be announcing some of these information once the plans are formalized, but we will need all our beneficiary networks help to distribute these cards as well, so that there's a freedom of choice on what they want to do. Because you're very right, I can give them all the oats, but if they don't know how to cook it or they don't like to eat it, it's just going to sit there.
Yeah.
Our food waste.
Yes, correct. Yeah, that will contribute to it.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello, it's me again. I have another question, but I was just listening to what Nicole and Connie are sharing about the data coming from the agencies. So in my mind, I was just wondering, like, those clients that the family service center helps, are they already receiving food aid? So I'm thinking about those that we are missing out on. Most probably they are living the rental flats that they are not reached out to. So I'm wondering, what's the feasibility of trying to use something like the survey that the survey that you all use on the households to then accurately assess whether they are food insecure or not, then reach out our help to them. The reason why I'm asking this is, if we just go straight to the door and ask them, are you food insecure due to embarrassment, etc., they might say, oh no, I'm fine, and then we will just lose this resident.
Yeah, Terence, I think none of us can solve these issues individually as organizations. I really feel that this is a challenge that one of the ministries need to take up, because and I think it might be done collectively. That means all the agencies, all of us come together. We will do each block, or it's by geographical regions or something, but they need to do a deep dive into the surveys, maybe starting with the rental blocks or with the data that actually the social workers might have. So sometimes actually a lot of this data comes in, the referral comes in from hospitals. Because when they find someone not being able to pay their medical bills, right, and then they do the means testing and all that, the cases start to surface up. But we can't say for sure whether they are staying north, south, east, west, central, or whatever. But you're right to say that the next step would likely be to do a more in-depth survey, maybe into the specific areas of need, maybe by area, you know. But I don't think it can be done by yourself or myself or one of our agencies. It needs to be done on more of a national level. And I think, in fact, I think MSF is really looking into this because they realize that there is actually no database for the people in need. They have all the different databases, right? People getting school bursaries or whatever, but it's all over the place. There's no integrated help. And actually, this is my biggest problem with the current system, because every time someone in need, they want to apply for something else, they need to go through the whole means testing again. And sometimes the per capita income need help to get the help that they require. So I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it will start with data first, so that there's also no duplication of help. Because currently, I think like Connie mentioned, there are really some people who are very clever, right? They can cheat the system or beat the system. Then they have this whole stack of stuff. So how do we help to deconflict those kind of households as well? And one of the things that I did share very openly is that there are a lot of grown-ups now. Like from and these big-hearted people, they just go out, they think that, oh, Red Hill need a lot of help. Then they all go to Red Hill, but actually the Red Hill people are already well taken care of by all the different service centers there already. But they don't think twice about it. They just get their donations and then just drop off door to door. And then, I mean, if people give you something free, you also won't reject one. You will just accept. So usually my appeal to the ground-ups is that if you want to do a ground-up initiative, maybe you volunteer with an accredited charity or NGO first, and then understand the real needs before you decide whether there's really a need to do a ground-up initiative. If not, it causes a lot of duplicated work. Yeah, so but that's some ideas that I have.
So on a national level, I think our report as well, we are recommending better coordination and collaboration between the different players in the ecosystem. So I think one thing that we really want to highlight is the need for each relevant player to share the information that they have. Especially when you collaborate and coordinate with the government, they have a lot of information because they do needs assessment. And then the other actors can come in to also share about what kind of households, who are they reaching, where are they getting their funds from, monetary donation, food donations, where are they distributing the food, where are your volunteers mobilized. So if everyone is coming together to share this information, then the chances of duplication is also less. So the focus actually has to be on pooling everyone's resources together and working together for the common good, and also leveraging everyone's strength.
Yes, just I think reiterating what Delvin mentioned, we have a question in the chat from Andrea from Feria saying, how accessible are these food aids? Is there a resource list that we can provide to the clients so that they can also bridge the gap? So I think it's really that data sharing is also very important. Yeah.
So actually, what we should do together collectively is to start putting a resource or a yellow pages of sorts of where all the different food programs are listed down, and then maybe share with the entire social workers team, the family service centers and the different agencies, so that when you have that information, because currently there is no such information. Like if I need cooked food, then and I stay in the north, is there and I'm a Buddhist, is there a temple that's cooking like something or something like that? But so we need to put that directory together, and maybe you're right. Maybe Food Bank should take the lead together with some of the other charities and start putting all these things together as a starting point. Maybe just a side note to Jessie and Margarita, maybe this is something for us to take away to start looking at it as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I know it's lunchtime for most of you, so but thank you for your time. I think after this, we will get the food bank team to send the in-depth report to all of you, and we'll be happy to take on any questions that your team may have after you share with them, or if there are any ideas that you may also have to improve on the directory or the way that we are feeding everybody. But on this note, I would like to thank the Lian Center team as well. They have put a lot of effort into this. It was quite difficult to get some of the information door to door. So there was a lot of work that was also put in into that as well. And importantly, again, I want to emphasize, if there's anything else that you think that we should be reporting on or deep diving on, please feel free to reach out to any of the food bankers or even directly to Nicholas and myself. We'll be happy to take on the ideas so that we can make the report even more robust than before. And yes, so thank you very much for everyone's time.
Okay, so just before we leave, maybe we can take a nice group photo. So if you guys don't mind turning on your camera. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so we can smile everyone. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, got it.
All right, thank you everyone for attending.
Happy World Food Day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.